Hey warrior, there's a war going on inside you right now, and most days you don't even realize you're fighting it. It's the war that starts the moment you wake up, and your mind already feels heavy when one message can change your mood, when one small moment of disrespect can follow you around all day. You smile, you keep it together, you tell people you're fine. But inside, your thoughts are loud, your emotions pull you in different directions, and part of you is tired of feeling like your peace is so easy to steal. If that feels familiar, you're not broken. You're human, and you're living in a world that constantly tests your attention, your patience, and your emotional balance. In this video, we're going to talk about how to build that inner strength in real life, in messy moments, in conversations that trigger you, in situations you can't control. Not with fake positivity, not with pretending you don't feel, but with practical Stoic wisdom you can actually use today. If you're ready to stop letting your emotions run your life and start guiding them with clarity and self-respect, you're in the right place. And if this kind of thinking speaks to you, consider subscribing, not as a favor to me, but as a quiet commitment to your own growth, your own discipline, and the version of you that chooses wisdom over impulse. Habit 1. Don't take it personal. Goes unanswered. A tone that sounds off goes unanswered. A tone that sounds off. Suddenly, your chest tightens and your mind starts spinning stories. You replay the moment. You imagine what they meant. You wonder what you did wrong. One small interaction turns into a whole emotional storm inside your head. This happens so fast that we don't even question it. We just assume the feeling is valid because it feels real. But here's the quiet trap. When your peace depends on how others treat you, your peace is fragile by design. Stoicism starts by pointing this out without judgment. It doesn't shame you for feeling. It teaches you how to stop letting every external moment decide your inner state. The Stoics believed that most emotional pain doesn't come from what happens, but from how we interpret what happens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." That's not saying disrespect is okay. It's saying your suffering grows when you turn someone's behavior into a story about your worth. Someone can be rude, distant, or careless, and that behavior can be wrong, but the moment you make it personal, you double the pain. Now, you're not just dealing with their action, you're dealing with the meaning you attach to it, and meanings are powerful. They shape your emotions, your reactions, and sometimes even how you see yourself. Psychology says something similar. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you take things personally without noticing the pattern, your reactions start running on autopilot. You don't choose how you feel, the trigger chooses for you. You think you're responding to the situation, but often you're responding to old wounds, old fears, or old beliefs about being rejected or disrespected. This is why two people can experience the same comment and feel completely different about it. One shrugs it off, the other carries it all day. The difference isn't the comment, it's the meaning each person gave to it. Stoicism invites you to pause and create space between what happens and how you respond. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." That space is small at first. Sometimes it's just one breath. But in that breath, you get your power back. Instead of reacting automatically, you step back and ask, "Is this really about me, or is this about them?" Someone might be speaking from stress, jealousy, insecurity, or pain that has nothing to do with you. When you remember that, the emotional charge starts to lose its grip. You still see what happened. You just don't let it define you. There's also a quiet strength that grows when you stop needing every interaction to confirm your value. Western psychology talks about ego protection, the way we defend our self-image when it feels threatened. When your sense of self is fragile, every small comment feels like a personal attack. Stoicism trains you to build a steadier center. Your worth isn't something that needs to be defended in every conversation. Seneca put it simply, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most of the pain comes from what we tell ourselves about the moment, not the moment itself. When you notice your mind adding extra meaning, you can gently question it instead of believing it. This doesn't mean you become passive or let people treat you badly. Not taking things personally doesn't mean you accept disrespect. It means you respond from clarity instead of emotion. You can set boundaries without anger. You can speak up without losing control. You can walk away without carrying the weight of the moment on your back all day. Over time, this habit changes how you move through the world. You listen more calmly. You choose your responses more carefully. You stop giving random moments the power to decide your mood. And slowly, almost quietly, you become someone who can stand in the middle of noise and still feel grounded. Habit 2. Slow down your reactions. In that split second, your body tightens. In that split second, your body tightens and your mind races to protect you. It feels automatic, like you don't even get a choice. One moment you're calm, the next you're already forming a sharp reply in your head. This is the moment most people lose control, not because they're bad people, but because speed takes over before wisdom has a chance to speak. Stoicism starts right here, in that tiny space between what happens and how you respond. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that it is not events that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. When you react too fast, you never get the chance to question those judgments. You just act them out. When emotions move fast, they don't ask for permission. Anger doesn't knock. Anxiety doesn't wait politely. Hurt doesn't schedule an appointment. They burst in and take the wheel. This is why slowing down is not weakness. It's leadership of the self. The Stoics trained themselves to pause on purpose, to create a gap between impulse and action. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you learn to pause before reacting, because that pause is where choice lives. Without that pause, your reactions are not choices at all. They are habits running on autopilot. Think about how many times you said something you didn't mean simply because you were in a rush to protect your pride. Slowing down gives your mind time to breathe, and when the mind can breathe, it can see more clearly. Psychology agrees with this ancient wisdom. Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you react instantly, you're letting unconscious patterns run the show. Old wounds, old fears, old stories take control of the moment. Slowing down shines a light on those patterns. It lets you notice, oh, this feeling again, this story again. That awareness is powerful. It turns emotional reactions into something you can observe instead of something that controls you. The more you slow your reactions, the more you start to see how often your mind exaggerates danger, disrespect, or rejection. Most of the time, the threat isn't real. It's just your nervous system sounding a false alarm. Here's a simple way to practice slowing down in real life. When you feel that emotional rush, don't answer right away. Let your body settle first. Take one deep breath, then another. Feel your feet on the ground. Tell yourself, I don't have to respond to this right now. Seneca warned that anger, when allowed to run freely, becomes a kind of madness. You don't cure madness by adding speed. You cure it by slowing the mind down. Give yourself time to see the situation from above, like watching a scene instead of being trapped inside it. When you do this, you'll notice something surprising. Many things that felt urgent lose their power after a few minutes. The fire dies down. The need to react fades. Slowing down also protects your future self. When you respond in a rush, you often have to clean up the mess later. You apologize, you explain. You replay the moment in your head and wish you could take it back. Stoicism teaches that discipline now saves suffering later. Choosing calm in the moment feels harder at first, but it saves you hours of regret. Over time, this habit reshapes your character. People start to notice that you don't jump at every provocation. You listen more, you speak less, but with more intention. Your presence becomes steadier, not because you don't feel emotion, but because emotion no longer rushes you into decisions you don't respect. The goal is not to become slow in life, it's to become slow in judgment. You can move fast when you're clear. You can act quickly when you're grounded. But when emotion surges, slowly becomes strong. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you are training your nervous system to trust your wisdom instead of your impulses. This is Stoicism in action. Not coldness, not suppression, just the quiet power of choosing your response instead of being dragged by it. Habit 3. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't care. You know that tight feeling in your chest when you realize someone misunderstood you, or worse, judged you without even asking your side of the story. Your first instinct is to fix it, to explain, to clear the air, to show them you're not who they think you are. It feels reasonable, it feels fair, but most of the time, that urge doesn't come from clarity. It comes from discomfort, from wanting to control how you're seen. The Stoics noticed this long before social media and group chats made misunderstanding constant. Epictetus warned that we suffer not because of what people say about us, but because of the judgments we make about their opinions. When you rush to explain yourself, you're often giving their opinion power over your inner peace. Here's the quiet truth most people don't like to hear. Not everyone is trying to understand you. Some people just want confirmation of the story they already created about you. You can bring them facts, context, and your heart, and they'll still twist it to fit their mood. Marcus Aurelius put it simply when he wrote that you don't need to spend your life arguing about what a good person should be. You just need to be one. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stay silent out of fear. It invites you to stay silent out of strength. When your actions stay steady, they speak louder than any emotional defense ever could. Psychology backs this up in a powerful way. Carl Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause and ask what's really being touched inside you. Is it fear of being disliked? Is it the need to be seen as good? Is it the old wound of feeling misunderstood? That moment of pause is where growth lives. You stop reacting to the outside world and start responding to what's happening inside you. That's Stoicism in motion, not suppression. Awareness. Think about how much energy you lose trying to manage other people's opinions. It's like carrying water in your hands. No matter how careful you are, it leaks. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The stories you tell yourself about what others think can become heavier than what they actually think. When you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening, something strange happens. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, you feel grounded again. You realize your peace doesn't depend on their agreement. This doesn't mean you never explain yourself. It means you choose wisely. You speak to people who are open. You go quiet with people who are closed. That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. The Stoic path is about protecting your inner world so you can live with clarity. When you let your actions do the talking, you stop performing for approval and start standing in your truth. And over time, the need to explain fades. What remains is a calm confidence that doesn't need permission to exist. Habit 4. Build an inner wall and protect your mental space. Some days, it feels like everything gets under your skin. A look from someone across the room, a careless joke, a tone that feels off. You tell yourself it's nothing, but your body reacts before your mind does. Your chest tightens, your mood drops. You carry the moment with you long after it's over. This is how most people move through life, open, exposed, absorbing every emotional signal in the environment. The Stoics noticed this pattern centuries ago. Epictetus warned that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the way we interpret them. In other words, the world doesn't reach into your chest and move your emotions. Your judgments open the door, and most of us leave that door wide open without realizing it. Stoicism doesn't teach you to become cold or detached from life. It teaches you to build inner boundaries so your peace is not at the mercy of other people's moods. Think about your mind like a quiet room inside you. Not everyone deserves access to that room. Some people walk in carrying noise, anger, insecurity, and unresolved pain. When you let all of that in, you end up living with feelings that were never yours to begin with. Marcus Aurelius put it simply when he wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. That power starts with choosing what you allow to take up space inside you. You can listen without absorbing. You can notice without taking on the weight. That's the beginning of emotional strength. There's also a psychological side to this. Carl Jung once said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. When someone projects their anger, jealousy, or bitterness onto you, they're often trying to escape something inside themselves. If you don't have inner boundaries, you end up carrying their unfinished inner work. You walk away from conversations feeling heavy, confused, or drained, and you don't even know why. The Stoic practice here is quiet but powerful. You remind yourself, this reaction belongs to them, not to me. You let their emotions pass through the room without taking a seat in your mind. Building this inner wall doesn't happen in one moment. It's built in small choices. Every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you don't explain yourself to someone who isn't listening, every time you decide not to carry someone else's emotional mess home with you. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and a big part of that suffering comes from replaying what others said or did. The wall grows stronger when you stop rehearsing those moments in your head. You let them end where they happened. The scene doesn't follow you into the night. It doesn't get to shape your mood the next morning. Over time, something shifts inside you. You still care, but you don't collapse. You still feel, but you don't bleed internally over every small cut. Stoicism doesn't ask you to harden your heart. It asks you to protect your center. When your inner space becomes guarded, you start to move differently. You listen more calmly. You choose your responses with more care. You stop giving your emotional energy to people who haven't earned it. And slowly, quietly, you become someone who can walk through loud rooms with a steady mind because your peace is no longer up for public access. Habit 5. Expect disrespect. When it doesn't happen, when someone cuts, when it doesn't happen, when someone cuts you off, talks down to you, takes credit for your work, or throws shade for no reason, it hits harder than it should. Not because the moment itself is unbearable, but because you didn't see it coming. You expected smooth ground, and instead you stepped on glass. That shock is what steals your calm. The Stoics saw this pattern clearly. Marcus Aurelius warned that we should begin each day prepared to meet difficult people, not to become bitter, but to become steady. When you expect friction, you don't panic when it appears. You move through it with composure. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop hoping people will always be fair to you and start training your mind to stay grounded when they aren't. This isn't pessimism, it's emotional preparation. Stoicism doesn't ask you to harden your heart. It teaches you to strengthen your spine. Think about it like training for bad weather. You don't curse the rain when it falls because you brought a jacket. In the same way, when someone disrespects you, you don't collapse because you were already prepared for imperfect human behavior. Epictetus put it simply when he said that people act the way they do because of their own judgments and habits. In other words, their behavior is more about their inner world than your worth. When you remember that, disrespect loses some of its sting. Psychology backs this up too. Carl Jung once said that what irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When someone disrespects you, notice what part of you reacts the most. Is it pride? Is it a fear of not being seen? Is it an old wound about being overlooked? These moments are uncomfortable, but they are also mirrors. They show you where you're still sensitive. And sensitivity isn't weakness. It's an area that hasn't been trained yet. Stoicism teaches that training happens before the battle, not during it. You don't wait for disrespect to practice calmly. You rehearse your response in advance. You decide ahead of time how you want to show up. The practical part is simple, even if it's not easy. When you wake up, quietly remind yourself that someone today might be rude, dismissive, or careless. Not everyone, but someone. This mental note doesn't make you cold. It makes you ready. Then, when it happens, you feel the emotion rise, but you don't have to follow it. You pause, you breathe, you let the moment pass without letting it define you. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and that's especially true with disrespect. We replay it, we add meaning to it, we carry it longer than we need to. Training yourself to expect small acts of disrespect helps you drop them faster. You stop collecting them like trophies of pain. Over time, something shifts. You start to walk through your day with quiet strength. Not because people stop being difficult, but because their behavior no longer shakes your foundation. You become less reactive and more deliberate. You respond when it matters and stay silent when it doesn't. That's Stoic power. Not dominance over others, but mastery over your own reactions. And when you can stand steady in the face of disrespect, you realize something freeing. Your peace doesn't depend on how others behave. It depends on how well you've trained your mind to meet the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Habit 6. Don't chase feeling better, think better. Creeps in and we distract ourselves. We creeps in and we distract ourselves. We scroll, we snack, we binge something. We look for noise to drown out what we don't want to feel. It's automatic now. But here's the quiet problem with that habit. When you train yourself to escape discomfort, you also train yourself to be weak in the moments that actually matter. The Stoics noticed this pattern long before screens existed. They saw that people who chased relief become slaves to their moods, while people who learn to sit with discomfort build real inner strength. As Seneca warned, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. We waste it by running from the very moments that could make us stronger. Stoicism doesn't ask you to become cold or harsh. It asks you to become steady. That steadiness is built when you stop needing to feel good all the time. Think about how often you say, "I just want this feeling to go away." The Stoic move is different. It's to say, "I can sit with this for a moment." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In simple terms, discomfort isn't always the enemy. Your story about discomfort is. When you meet silence without running, when you let boredom exist without filling it, when you allow awkwardness without fixing it, you start to see how much of your suffering was coming from resistance, not reality. Psychology backs this up too. Carl Jung put it plainly, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. The more you push discomfort away, the louder it comes back. But when you sit with it, something strange happens. It softens. The storm passes faster when you stop fighting the rain. Try a small practice, 10 minutes of silence a day, no phone, no music, Just you and your breath. Your mind will complain. That's normal. Let it. You're training it, not obeying it. Discomfort is the gym of the mind. Each time you stay present instead of escaping, you add another layer of calm to your character. The Stoics used this on purpose. They practiced small hardships so life's bigger storms wouldn't crush them. Epictetus said, "Difficulties show a person's character." Modern psychology echoes this idea through exposure and resilience training. You don't become strong by avoiding what's hard. You become strong by meeting it with awareness. Sit with cravings instead of feeding them. Walk without headphones sometimes. Say no when you usually say yes. These tiny acts change your relationship with discomfort. Over time, you realize something powerful. You don't need comfort to feel safe. You can be uncomfortable and still be okay. That's real freedom. Habit 7. Don't turn every feeling into a story. Some mornings you wake up and something just feels off. Nothing terrible happened. No big disaster. No clear reason. Yet your chest feels heavy, your energy is low, and your thoughts start whispering, "Something must be wrong with me." That's usually where the spiral begins. The mind hates empty space, so it fills the silence with stories. It turns a passing mood into a personal problem. But here's the thing most people never learn. Not every feeling is trying to tell you something deep about your life. Sometimes a feeling is just a feeling. Stoicism reminds us that emotions can rise and fall like weather. They come and go. Marcus Aurelius put it simply when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Often, the real suffering begins not with the emotion, but with the meaning you attach to it. Think about how often you wake up tired and immediately label the whole day as bad. Or you feel anxious for no clear reason and assume something terrible is about to happen. This is the habit Stoicism trains you to break. You learn to separate sensation from story. You can notice the feeling without turning it into a headline about your identity or your future. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you blindly attach meaning to every emotion, your unconscious patterns run the show. You start living as if every mood is a prophecy. But when you pause and observe the feeling without judgment, you bring it into the light. You stop letting it quietly control your choices. There's a quiet strength in saying, "I feel low today, and that's okay." No drama, no self-attack, no big story about what this means for your life. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. The same is true of your inner world. You can feel sadness without deciding your life is broken. You can feel anxiety without believing you are unsafe. The Stoic move is to let the emotion pass through you without letting it define you. Like watching clouds drift across the sky, you notice them, but you don't chase them or try to build your home inside them. Modern psychology echoes this idea. Emotions are signals, not commands. They're information, not instructions. When you stop turning every feeling into a story about who you are, you create space between the feeling and your identity. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and this habit shows you how that suffering begins. It begins the moment you take a temporary emotion and turn it into a permanent label. When you practice letting feelings exist without over-interpreting them, you become steadier. You still feel deeply. You just stop letting every feeling rewrite your story. Habit 8. Practice silence and discomfort on purpose. Most people don't realize how uncomfortable they've become with being alone with their own mind. The moment things get quiet, the phone comes out. The moment there's nothing to do, we look for noise, music, videos, scrolling, anything to avoid that small, awkward space where our thoughts start to speak. But that space isn't empty. It's where your real patterns live. The Stoics believed that silence is not the absence of life, but the place where you finally hear it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own soul. When you learn to sit with yourself without running, you start to notice how much of your stress comes not from life, but from your constant need to escape it. At first, silence feels loud, your thoughts race, old worries pop up, random memories surface. That's normal, you're not doing it wrong, you're finally seeing what was already there. Stoicism doesn't ask you to destroy these thoughts. It asks you to observe them without panic. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. When you sit in silence, you start to see how quickly your mind creates stories out of nothing. You learn to watch those stories instead of becoming them. And in that watching, a small space opens up. That space is the beginning of freedom. Discomfort works the same way. We've trained ourselves to avoid it at all costs. Hunger, snack, boredom, scroll, awkward emotion, distract. But avoiding discomfort makes you fragile. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort because they understood something we forget. If you never train in hard conditions, every small challenge feels like a crisis. Seneca once warned that a person who has not been trained to endure the little things will be defeated by the big ones. Simple practices build strength. Cold showers, saying no when you usually say yes, sitting with an urge instead of feeding it. Each time you stay present through mild discomfort, your nervous system learns that discomfort is not danger, it's just a feeling that passes. Modern psychology points to the same truth. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Growth doesn't come from comfort zones. It comes from facing what you'd rather avoid. Silence brings up what you've been running from. Discomfort exposes the habits that keep you small. Stoicism teaches you to walk into these spaces with calm, not fear. You're not punishing yourself. You're training your mind to stay steady when life stops being convenient. And when chaos shows up, you won't panic. You'll recognize the feeling. You've sat with it before. Habit 9. Study your emotional slips. Later, when the noise settles, there's later when the noise settles. There's that quiet feeling in your chest that says, "I didn't mean to show up like that." Here's the part people miss. That moment isn't proof you're failing. It's proof you're learning. Stoicism doesn't expect you to be perfect. It asks you to be aware. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Every emotional slip is adversity in small form. It shows you where you still get pulled. It points to the part of you that needs training, not punishment. Think about it like this. When you lose your temper, your mind is leaving clues behind. The tone that set you off, the look you took personally, the thought that rushed in before you even noticed it. The Stoics believed that events don't wound us on their own. It's the judgment we place on them that cuts. Marcus Aurelius put it simply when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." That's not just philosophy for books. That's a practical lens you can use the moment you cool down. Ask yourself, what story did I tell myself right before I reacted? Was it really about them or about what I believed their words meant about me? This is where psychology quietly agrees with Stoicism. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you don't study your emotional slips, they keep repeating. Same triggers, same reactions, same regret. But when you slow down and look at the pattern, you start to see the invisible thread. Maybe you react strongly to disrespect because you tie your worth to how people treat you. Maybe you spiral when ignored because part of you fears being unimportant. These patterns aren't random. They're messages from your inner world asking to be understood. So don't rush past your mistakes. Sit with them. Write them down if you can. Not to shame yourself, but to learn your own design. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Growth looks messy before it looks strong. Each time you catch yourself reacting, you gain a small window of freedom. Over time, that window becomes space. And in that space, you choose differently. That's Stoicism in action. Not becoming emotionless, but becoming aware enough to guide your emotions instead of being dragged by them. You don't have to win every argument to win your life. You don't have to react to every storm to prove you're strong. Real power is quiet. It's the strength to choose your response when your emotions are loud, to stay grounded when the world tries to pull you into chaos. If something in this video stayed with you, that's not an accident. That's your mind recognizing a better way forward. Before you go, watch one of the videos on your screen next. Let it build on what you just started here and take this mindset one step deeper. Thank you for being a part of Psychresto Mind. Your presence here means you're choosing growth over noise, and that choice will change your life.